Most of the time, I am this weird amalgamation of like genders and vibes and essence and just being that I literally cannot define. I don't know. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. It's like the universe. It's like ever flowing. There's like...
All right, everybody, it's time for everyone's favorite part of the podcast, where I subject myself to torture for your entertainment, because some of you are a little sick and like to watch me suffer, and I react to insane LGBT TikToks from the alphabet people from the perspective of a gay guy who hasn't yet lost his mind. Up first, did you know if you're white and gay, or queer, whatever that means these days, you are the problem?
This might be a controversial take, but I'm seeing a lot of queer white people posting shit like posting themselves being really happy and doing some random shit and being like, yeah, our joy is resistance. And like, in my opinion, white people's joy is not resistance. Like, queer or not, your joy is not resistance. Matter of fact, your joy is what got us here in the first place. Like, your joy is why we're having to resist. And like, y'all putting yourselves and finding yourselves and like your own joy in front of everybody else is what got us here. Like, literally, I'm seeing so many white people right now going on like organizer retreats and posting about their joy and how awesome it was. Honestly, I want to see more of y'all like sitting your ass at home and giving your money to black and brown people. So
all right, guys, well, I guess I know that I'm not allowed to post myself being happy or doing positive things online because I am the problem. I actually do not identify with the label queer whatsoever, and neither do a lot of people who are gay. So some do, and that's fine, but a lot of us don't really like to be called that. But that is the woke speak nowadays, I guess. I find this video interesting for a couple reasons. One, that the idea, I do agree with this person, that white people's joy is not, in fact, resistance. To what exactly? Don't ask. Just resistance. But neither is anyone else's. And it's actually perfectly fine for people, gay or straight or whatever, to post themselves being happy online. Seriously, I would love for this individual to explain one way, one single specific way, that her life has been harmed or made worse by white queer people's joy. I'll wait. I do always find it funny with people like this, how obviously, in the grand scheme of things, privileged they are, yet how obsessed they are with somehow feeling oppressed. This woman is a young adult who is healthy, who seems to have an iPhone, seems to be driving a car, and in the grand scheme of human history, that makes her in the 99.9999th percentile of the most privileged human beings to ever have existed. You're not living in apartheid South Africa, babe. You're not living in Jim Crow America. You're living in a country that isn't perfect, but where you have the freedom to be whatever you want to be and to make of your life what you make of it. It's strange to me that folks like this would rather twist themselves into pretzels and find ways that other people are causing the problems in their life. But maybe it's just a grift. I don't know. I mean, they did literally end this video calling for them to be sent money, black and brown people, just for their skin pigment or whatever. Make it make sense. Up next, if you're watching this and you're a cis white woman, so just a white woman, you are the scariest population.
Cis white women are the scariest population group out of any group of people ever. It's period. Especially the small, cute ones. Just to be honest. Y'all cry. People die. Right? Like,
Oh?
I've never been abused more than by a cute, small, cis white woman. You know? Maybe my dad, but like for people who are not in my life my entire life, yeah, it's a cute little cis white woman who make sure every time to tell me they'll never believe you. Just like that. With glee. When I lived in Compton, it wasn't cis white dudes coming in, it was cis white women. They'd feel threatened and people would die. So.
Okay. Now that I've taken a moment to gather my thoughts, it is insane to see these supposedly woke people who claim to be all about dignity and equality for all people of all identities just casually insulting and stereotyping and demeaning entire demographic groups of people. I'm really honestly sorry if you were abused by someone, by anyone, and that is of course terrible. But it's unfair and objectively bigoted to blame the actions of a few individuals on an entire demographic group of people. Imagine if somebody was mugged by a black person once and then started saying that black men are the scariest population. We would all be like, WTF, that's racist and bigoted. It's not somehow different because you have a nose ring and you're talking about white women, babe. You just sound like the KKK, but woke. It's also just funny to me because imagine being one of these radical trans activists and wanting to push your agenda and gain acceptance for your community or whatever their goals may be, yet actively dismissing, disdaining, or throwing shade at a huge portion of the country. I mean, white cis women, so just white women who are not transgender, that's literally a huge portion of this country and of voters in this country, and you're just casually being bigoted and hating them? Not the best strategy. People like this, they just need to delete their accounts and stop posting. You're doing a lot of harm, and I can't really see any good. Up next, try to keep up with this TikTok. It's gonna be tough. Warning you now. It's going to be difficult to follow.
I love when I accidentally start queer discourse. Yesterday I posted a video where I talked about how frustrating it is when people misgender me as someone who presents femme the majority of the time. A lot of you pointed out how not everyone who presents femme uses she, her, or in my case, she, they pronouns, and some people who use he, him pronouns present femme regularly too. Which is a great point, and it brings us to this idea of gender identity versus gender presentation. These two camps are often but not always correlated, which is why it's dangerous to make assumptions. For example, I was assigned male at birth, and most people who are assigned male at birth go on to identify as boys and men, but I realized I could not be further from that. I identify as a trans feminine person, and therefore my gender presentation is femme. Which is why I was so frustrated in that video, because people will see that I have a couple of features typical of someone who is assigned male at birth, and then assume that they should use he, him pronouns for me. Even if it's a subconscious assumption, the action can still be quite painful. Now, in spite of a couple of characteristically male features, my gender presentation is almost always femme in the way I dress, in the way I speak, in the length of my hair, etc., which matches with my gender identity of a trans feminine person, hence the correlation I was talking about earlier. But as many of you pointed out, not everyone's gender identity and gender presentation correlates like that. Some people's only correlates a little bit, or some people's only correlates on certain days, or sometimes, or some people's only correlate never. All of this is to say that making assumptions about someone else's gender identity can be really harmful and hurtful to that person. So how the are you supposed to know what to call people if you don't know their pronouns? Well, for a long time, a lot of folks, myself included, would say you should assume they pronouns if you're unsure. And I still understand a lot of the logic behind this. However, you might meet a woman, for example, who has a lot of characteristically male features like myself. And if you assume they pronouns for her, it might be really hurtful because she's a woman. She doesn't want to be seen as non-binary. So if you're really unsure, use that person's name, which is probably going to be the most affirming thing for them to hear anyway, until you get a chance to ask them, or better yet, ask a friend of theirs what pronouns they use. Because if you take the burden off of that individual to either have to explain to you their gender identity, or worse, have to correct you after you make the wrong assumption, and instead do the work on your own to figure out what best validates them, it's going to make them so happy.
Alright. What the fuck? What would make me happy is if y'all could start to make even a little bit of sense. Don't misgender me, but also don't assume my gender, but also please assume my gender and get my pronouns correctly, because look at how I express myself, but also how I express myself has nothing to do with my pronouns. Babe, you're incoherent. Everything you say is internally contradictory. Sort your shit out. Get your message together and come back to us once you have it figured out. And then we can discuss it and see if, we agree, we disagree, we can have that conversation. But until you sort your own message out, you really have no business popping off on TikTok. There's so much wrong with this video. I really can't react to all of it, but just a couple gems in here. It's now not even woke enough to call someone not they, them, if you don't know their gender, and just refer in the neutral. That's offensive. That's problematic now. And while they always told us we were supposed to ask people what their pronouns are, now you shouldn't ask people what their pronouns are. You should go find their friend and ask them and then come back. Like, you don't get to give homework assignments for social interactions. You're just making yourself seem difficult and unreasonable and deeply confused. And it's not other people's job to constantly affirm your sense of self or to make you happy. That has to come from in here, from inside. And if it doesn't, you end up with woke word salad like this. Up next, keeping with today's theme, I guess, we have more confused messaging about gender.
I want to try to define my gender, but it's really hard in 60 seconds, so I'm going to talk really fast. I'm gender fluid, and here's how that works for me. Most of the time, I'm one of two, modes or mindsets. Most of the time, I am this weird amalgamation of, genders and vibes and essence and just being that I literally cannot define. I don't know. You're just going to have to take my word for it. It's like the universe. It's, ever-flowing. There's, sparkles, and it's just it changes over time and it moves through each other, and it's never one thing. And then other majority of the time I'm just a void. There's nothing there. There's just an absence, and I don't know how else to describe it. So either everything or nothing. Those are the two that I'm usually in. But then every once in a while, and I don't know where it comes from, but I'll just be thrust back into a binary. I'll just be sitting there chilling, enjoying my life, and then all of a sudden I'm a man? Who asked? Or a woman? Since when?
So, I feel sad for this deeply confused individual, and please do not make fun of this person or any of the people I feature in my videos or make fun of their looks. Please don't do that. But her message is really harmful, and it needs to stop. Our fight for dignity and acceptance for the LGBT community over the decades was always rooted in the notion that you're born this way. Not literally, but in the sense that these are immutable characteristics about us that we cannot change and are not within our control, so it's not fair to judge us for them or to discriminate against us and treat us differently for them. Now we have woke people like this clinging on to the alphabet label, claiming that their identity changes every 5 seconds and they can't even keep up. That's not how our community works, my dude. It's not how it works. Don't conflate your deep confusion with what personality you want to have, or what vibes you feel, or what cosmic connection to the universe you're experiencing, or the void inside that you should probably be discussing with a therapist, not with TikTok. Don't conflate that with who we are and what we can't change about ourselves. What you really seem to mean in this video is that you're young and still confused and figuring out what your personality is and who you want to be as a person. That's fine. That's normal. But it doesn't actually have anything to do with sex, gender, or LGBT, and you're giving us all a bad name and making us all look crazy. All right, guys, that's it for this segment. I can't handle any more of these alphabet people's TikToks in one sitting without incurring permanent brain damage. If you got a kick out of this or enjoyed the podcast so far, please do consider subscribing. We recently crossed 100,000 subscribers and we're already at almost 105K. So this community is growing so fast on YouTube, but wherever you are, if you're with us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thanks and welcome to you as well. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't yet, and do like and comment with your thoughts, and I'll see you all in the next video. But if you're not sick of me yet, you can go here or here to check out some other episodes of Damage Control that you might just enjoy.